This is the new APL 55 from ICECO, and it will be replacing my longtime favorite fridge. And in this video, I'm going to tell you exactly why. So this is the newest fridge from ICECO. It is the APL 55. They've done a lot of work on this fridge and they have addressed a lot of concerns, however minor they were, that I had with the VL series, the VL Pro S series specifically. All right, so this is a dual zone 55 liter or 58 quart fridge, as the name would suggest. It has the capability to run as a dual zone, or you can remove the barrier and it runs as a single zone. When you remove the divider, the fridge will recognize that it's operating as a single zone and it will adjust the display accordingly. There are two baskets inside the fridge as well, which I found, even when using it as a single zone, to be extremely helpful, just to keep things a little more separated and organized. So even if you don't want a freezer side of the fridge, you can still use it at the same temperature but as a dual zone. So one of the things I like to do is put like drinks and condiments and stuff like that on one side and then meat kind of in the back. So you can keep everything separated that way and a little more organized in there, while still technically using it as a dual zone, even though they're the same temperature. That's another added benefit to having a dual zone. There are also two LED lights on either side. So if you're using it as a dual zone, each zone will have its own light. And then if it's a single zone, the whole area is just flooded with light. Keeping the fridge cool is the same ICECO compressor that ICECO has always used. But instead of using an R134A refrigerant, they're using an R513A refrigerant. That is way more effective than the R134A, and it's also kinder to the environment. This also means that it cools down extremely quickly. So before I go on a trip, I take this into the house, I plug it in, and on max mode, I cool this down. So on the freezer section, I cooled it down to 20 degrees, and on the refrigerator section, I cooled it down to 36 degrees, and it took about 45 minutes with an ambient temperature of 70 to cool down to those temperatures. Super, super quick. Staying on the compressor, it's also extremely quiet. ICECO claims that it is 38 decibels and under. However, in testing that I've seen, it is closer to about 45 decibels. The difference there isn't great enough to give them flack about it. It's still really close. So for reference, about 20 decibels is when things start becoming audible to humans, and 40 decibels is considered a whisper. Aiding the compressor and the efficiency of this fridge is the insulation. The insulation is 2.4 inches thick all the way around, so it's able to keep the temperature in here and keep the hot out really, really well. Far better than other fridges that I've tested. There's an efficiency test on this compared to the VL60 Pro S, which is right around the same capacity. This in dual zone is more efficient than the VL60 Pro S as a single zone by quite a bit. It actually draws a lot less power over the course of an hour than the VL60 Pro S as a single zone. That's super, super impressive. A lot of that is to do with the refrigerant, the added insulation, and then just how good the ICECO compressor is. Speaking of efficiency, for power consumption, Eco mode draws 42 watt hours while max mode draws 72 watt hours. That is obviously only when the compressor is running. So how often the compressor runs depends a lot on how much food is actually in here, the ambient temperature, and the temperatures that you have it set to. All of those variables change how often a compressor runs, so it's really hard for someone reviewing this fridge to tell you how long a fridge is going to last, because there are a lot of variables that are very subjective to the use of this specific person. What I can tell you is, from my experience, this drew a lot less from my EcoFlow power station than the VL45 Pro S did, and that's a smaller fridge, even though it's a single zone, but it's still a smaller fridge, so should have been able to keep in the heat a little more. This is more efficient than that from my limited testing. Moving from the inside of the fridge to the outside, ICECO has introduced this soft close lid, which I absolutely love. It's so good. I used this fridge at my 2-year-old son's birthday party, and it was really nice to have a bunch of kids running around and getting in the fridge for juice boxes and stuff like that, to not have to worry about the lid crushing their hands or heads or whatever. That's a very specific example, but I love this soft close lid. It's absolutely fantastic. That, and when you go in to grab something, you kind of can let it go and you're not rushing to grab something out of there before the lid just crushes you. So I love this soft close lid. It's so nice. While the lid's open, the seal is much improved on this model compared to the VL series. The seal was one of my complaints with the VL series. It was a foam that was set into this, and then there was a raised little ridge along the bottom that it sealed against, and that was it. I never had an issue with it, but it just didn't fill me with a lot of confidence that it was gonna hold in the temperature well. So I thought that would affect efficiency. And maybe it did. I have no concrete evidence to support that theory, but this, just by looks, is much improved. It has a thick rubber gasket all the way across, and then on the body of the fridge, it's recessed in to allow that rubber gasket to sit in. You pair that with these clamps that suck the lid into place and create a really, really tight seal, and it is vastly improved compared to previous offerings from ICECO. I really, really love this lid, seal, and clamp setup. It's fantastic. In between the two latches is the display. I really like the placement of the display because it's a lot easier to get to and read both in and out of the vehicle. I really like the placement, and I like the user interface of it as well. You have a lot of information on here too. You have both zones, you have the battery protection settings, you have how much voltage it's drawing, you have whether the Bluetooth is on or off. There's a ton of information displayed on here for you, and it's really nice. Clean display. You can set the brightness level of the display, so that's really cool as well, but it's really easy to read quickly. Below that is an LED light. I personally haven't used this yet, but it's in a really good place to help provide lighting for when you're preparing and cooking food. So I can see this being super useful. However, I haven't used it yet. Below that, you have these big metal handles. They feel a lot better. They're not as aggressively textured as the VL series, and they snap into place. That's super nice to have as well. I a lot of times forgot to put the handles away when I was trying to store it, which made it poke out a little more, and a minor thing, but this that spring is really, really nice to have. On both sides of the fridge, you have power options. So both sides get 2 USBs and a DC plug, and then the side with the display gets an AC plug as well. I can't tell you how nice that is to have the option to plug it in on either side. The AC doesn't matter as much because that's typically something you're going to be using at home, but the DC specifically is super nice to have that option to plug it in on either side depending on the setup of your vehicle. So when I have this in the vehicle, I don't use this portion of it. I actually plug it in the back, and then I can hide the wire, and it's completely tucked away, and I don't have to mess with it, and it's never getting in the way of anything. So to have the option to plug it in on either side is really, really nice. Another thing that they changed about this is the actual cover for it. On the VL series, these were extremely flimsy, and after a while they kind of pulled out and they never set back in quite right. These are a lot more rigid, and they almost feel like they're magnetic. They're not, but they set back in and seal up the ports really well. This is a minor thing, but kind of a big deal. This is a vast improvement over the VL Pro S series. With the exception of the matte black corner guards, which help protect the fridge when it's bouncing around in the truck and you're doing some crazy off-roading, everything is a gloss black finish on this completely metal case. It does attract fingerprints, but I don't care about that personally. I think it's a beautiful looking fridge. You can tell it's really tough and built with quality in mind. The body and the case of this is actually absolutely beautifully done. And then in the body, you have these thermo vents. ICECO says they are weatherproof. I don't know how they've gone about the weatherproofing of this, but they said the same thing of the VL series, which I've had that in rain and covered in dust, and that thing has not skipped a beat. It's never failed me. So when they say it's weatherproof, I'm gonna believe them. I've beat the crap out of the VL series and it still works perfectly. So I have all the faith that ICECO has done a very good job on this and the thermo vents, and probably improved it even further than what was on the VL series. I'll put the dimensions up on the screen for you, but this being a 55-liter fridge, it's a little bit bigger, takes up a little more space in the back of the Bronco, especially compared to the VL45, which I've been using, but not so much that I've had to reorganize my packing. With the added girth of this and the added insulation, it is decently heavy. It's a 60-pound fridge, and if I had one complaint about it, that would be it. It feels quite heavy lugging this thing around. I think the VL45 was around 45 pounds, and that seems a bit more manageable. 60 is a lot, but it is a bigger fridge. It's extremely efficient, and the trade-off for added weight and improved efficiency due to the insulation and all that, it's a worthwhile trade-off to have that extra weight. And again, that's comparing a 45-liter to a 55-liter. If you compare it to the VL60 Pro S series, which is a 60-liter fridge, that is 55 pounds, and this is 60 pounds. So 5 liters less and 5 pounds more. And a lot of that comes down to the fact that this is a dual zone and it's thicker, and there's thicker insulation. Again, the benefits you get from the things that cause the added weight are well worth the extra weight. This also has an app that you can use, so you can control this fridge from your phone, which is super cool. So for me, on a road trip, if I'm turning the car on and off a lot, I get worried that the fridge hasn't turned back on, because when I'm driving, I keep it on the power supply of the vehicle. I can check that with my phone to ensure that it's on, rather than going to the back, opening the door, make sure it's on, and then continue on my way. So it's really nice to have that app. For me, that's where I found it most useful, but it's really nice to be able to change the temperature settings and switch between max and eco mode and stuff like that with the app. It's a super nice feature to have. The app is also available for iOS and Android. So despite the added weight, the efficiency of this fridge, the innovation with the soft close lid, these latches, the improved seal on it, this amazing display and user interface that it has, this is going to be my new go-to fridge. I have absolutely fallen in love with this thing, and it's gonna be the fridge I reach for every time I go on a trip now. So if you're in the market for a fridge or looking to upgrade your fridge, this is the way to go. The ICECO APL 55.